The wind swept through the valley like a sigh from the past, carrying the faint scent of pine and dust that always seemed to cling to the mountains of Silver Creek. Jenica Williams tightened her scarf and squinted at the jagged peaks ahead. She had been gone for almost 10 years, long enough for the old logging road to crumble into gravel and for the forest to reclaim what humans once thought they owned. Her younger sister, Talia, trudged behind her, boots crunching on frost. "You sure this is the right place?" she asked, voice echoing through the empty pines. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Jenica unfolded the yellowed letter for the 100th time. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. To my granddaughters, Jenica and Talia Williams. If you're reading this, I am gone. What I leave you may seem worthless, but look closer. Our family's truth lies 200 feet below the earth. Eliza May Williams. The letter had arrived just 2 weeks ago, along with the deed to a mine in northern Montana, an abandoned shaft once owned by their late grandmother, Eliza May, who had vanished mysteriously 30 years ago. Talia leaned on her shovel, glancing at the overgrown slope ahead. "Grandma Eliza was a prospector, wasn't she? Everyone said she went crazy chasing gold." Jenica smiled faintly. "She wasn't crazy, just determined." The sisters reached a small clearing where a crooked wooden sign barely hung from rusted nails. The letters were almost illegible, but Jenica traced them with her glove. Williams' Claim, 1963. It didn't look like much. Just a rotted shed, a rusted ore cart, and a yawning black mouth in the cliffside. The mine. "Worthless," Talia muttered, kicking a rock down the slope. "Why couldn't she leave us something normal, like a cabin or money or a dog?" Jenica laughed, but her gaze lingered on the dark opening. She'd always been more like their grandmother, curious, stubborn, drawn to the stories buried beneath the surface. Maybe it's not as worthless as everyone thought. They set up camp by the shed. The place had clearly been abandoned for decades. Cobwebs draped the rafters, tools lay rusted and forgotten, and the faint smell of iron filled the air. Jenica lit a lantern and began sorting through the old crates. Inside one, she found faded notebooks tied with twine. "Look at this," she showed one to Talia. "Eliza's mining journals." The first page was dated June 14th, 1963. "The Williams vein runs deeper than the surveyors think. They say it's barren, but I've seen the shimmer of something no one else believes in. If my calculations are right, the treasure lies 200 feet down." "Treasure?" Talia scoffed. Maybe she meant fool's gold. But Jenica's heart raced. She flipped through more pages, sketches of tunnels, coordinates, and notes about an unusual mineral formation. Then something else caught her eye. A strange symbol etched on the last page, a triangle with a circle inside, surrounded by dots. "What's that?" Talia asked, frowning. "I have no idea," Jenica murmured, but she marked it next to the words, "Hidden Chamber." Night fell over the valley, cold and silent. The sisters built a small fire outside the shed, and the stars spread like silver dust overhead. For the first time since they'd arrived, Jenica felt the pull of the mountain, the same pull that must have driven her grandmother. Do you ever think that maybe Eliza didn't just disappear? Maybe she found something, and someone didn't want her to. Talia raised an eyebrow. "You've been watching too many mystery shows." Jenica smiled, but didn't answer. She couldn't shake the feeling that the letter was more than a sentimental gesture. It was a message, a clue left by a woman who had vanished without a trace. The next morning, Jenica and Talia prepared to explore the mine. They wore helmets, headlamps, and carried ropes, flashlights, and oxygen monitors, borrowed from a local outfitter. As they approached the mine entrance, the air grew colder, thicker. Talia hesitated. "You sure this is safe?" "No," Jenica admitted. "But Grandma wanted us to find something. We owe her that much." Inside, the tunnel sloped downward sharply. Their lights bounced off the walls, revealing streaks of quartz and dull veins of silver. The deeper they went, the more claustrophobic it felt. The air damp, the earth pressing in from all sides. "Feels like the mountain is breathing," Talia whispered. After 20 minutes, they reached a collapsed section of tunnel. Jenica examined it carefully, brushing away loose rock. "It looks like someone blasted this on purpose." "Why would anyone do that?" Talia asked. "To hide something," Jenica said softly. They began clearing debris. It was slow, exhausting work, but with every rock removed, Jenica felt a strange energy humming in the air, like the mine itself was waking up. After several hours, they uncovered a wooden support beam marked with the same triangle and circle symbol from Eliza's notebook. "That's it," Jenica said, excitement lighting her eyes. "Close to getting buried alive, maybe." Still, she followed as Jenica squeezed through the narrow gap they'd opened. On the other side was a small cavern, untouched for decades. The floor glittered faintly under their lamps. Jenica crouched, brushing dust aside, and froze. It wasn't quartz. It was gold. Raw, pure, threaded through the stone in veins thicker than her wrist. "Holy!" Talia knelt beside her, wide-eyed. "Jen, that's real gold. There's a fortune here!" Jenica's heart pounded. She ran her fingers along the glimmering rock, remembering Eliza's words. "The truth lies 200 feet below." They had only descended about 100 feet. If this was just the beginning... "There's more," she whispered. "There has to be more." Then something caught her attention, a faint metallic glint deeper in the chamber near what looked like an old wooden crate half buried in the dirt. She brushed it off, revealing the words, "Property of EMW." Inside the crate was a leather pouch filled with nuggets of unrefined gold, and beneath that, a folded piece of paper. Jenica opened it carefully. "If you found this, you've gone deeper than anyone before you. But the real secret lies below the second chamber. Be cautious. Some treasures were never meant to be unearthed." "Below the second chamber?" Talia repeated. "There's another level?" Jenica nodded slowly, staring into the darkness beyond the gold-veined wall. The tunnel dipped again, faintly visible. And from somewhere in that darkness came the faint echo of dripping water and something else, a low, rhythmic rumble, like distant machinery or footsteps. Talia froze. "Please tell me you heard that." Jenica gripped her flashlight tighter. "We're not alone down here." The sound echoed again, soft at first, then sharper, rhythmic. It came from somewhere beyond the gold-veined wall, deep within the mountain's belly. Jenica turned off her headlamp, plunging them into near darkness. For a moment, all she could hear was her own heartbeat. Then, silence. "Maybe it's just rock shifting," Talia whispered, though her voice trembled. "Or someone else down here," Jenica murmured, scanning the faint shapes of the cavern. She turned her light back on, The glimmer of gold was dazzling now, reflecting the beam like thousands of tiny mirrors. Whatever that noise had been, it had stopped, but the sense of being watched had not. "Let's mark this section," Jenica said, briskly, pulling a piece of chalk from her pack. She drew Eliza's symbol, triangle and circle, on the stone beside the gold vein. "We'll come back." "Come back?" Talia said, incredulous. "Jen, this is insane. We found gold, actual gold. That's the jackpot, right? We call a surveyor, depth is valued, and—" "No." Jenica's tone was calm but firm. "Grandma said the real secret was below the second chamber. This isn't it. There's more." Talia groaned. "You sound just like her." "I'll take that as a compliment," Jenica said.
They descended another 50 feet before the tunnel split into two. One passage curved left and was blocked by a partial collapse. The other slanted down and disappeared into darkness. Faint air drifted from that direction, cold, metallic, alive. Jenica pointed. "That way. You really trust your gut this much?" "I trust Grandma Eliza more." Talia sighed, but followed. The descent grew more treacherous. The walls were slick, the air heavy with moisture. Their boots squelched in the mud. Then Jenica's beam caught something odd, a carved wooden post embedded in the right-hand wall, etched with that same symbol again, triangle, circle, and dots. She brushed it with her glove, frowning. She marked this too. She wanted someone to follow. "But not too many," Talia said, glancing around nervously. "There's barely any oxygen down here." They paused to check their meters. Both blinked yellow. "Safe for now, but limited time." 10 minutes, then we go back," Jenica said. "No risks." The tunnel opened into a wide, slanted chamber. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling into a shallow pool, filling the space with echoes. Strange mineral deposits glimmered along the walls, greens, blues, and faint veins of gold. "Wow," Talia breathed. "It's like a cathedral." Jenica smiled faintly. "Grandma must have found this place decades ago." She approached the far end of the chamber, where the floor sloped even more sharply. There, almost hidden behind a curtain of stalactites, was a narrow shaft descending into blackness. It was perfectly circular, too smooth to be natural. Jenica crouched beside it and peered down. Her flashlight beam disappeared before reaching the bottom. "This must be it," she said softly. "The second shaft." Talia looked ready to protest, but Jenica was already unpacking their rope and carabiners. "We can anchor it here. I'll go first." "Hold up," Talia snapped. "You really trust your gut this much?" "I trust Grandma Eliza more." Talia sighed but followed. The descent grew more treacherous. The walls were slick, the air heavy with moisture. Their boots squelched in the mud. Then Jenica's beam caught something odd, a carved wooden post embedded in the right-hand wall, etched with that same symbol again, triangle, circle, and dots. She brushed it with her glove, frowning. She marked this too. She wanted someone to follow. "But not too many," Talia said, glancing around nervously. "There's barely any oxygen down here." They paused to check their meters. Both blinked yellow. "Safe for now, but limited time." 10 minutes, then we go back," Jenica said. "No risks." The tunnel opened into a wide, slanted chamber. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling into a shallow pool, filling the space with echoes. Strange mineral deposits glimmered along the walls, greens, blues, and faint veins of gold. "Wow," Talia breathed. "It's like a cathedral." Jenica smiled faintly. Grandma must have found this place decades ago. She approached the far end of the chamber, where the floor sloped even more sharply. There, almost hidden behind a curtain of stalactites, was a narrow shaft descending into blackness. It was perfectly circular, too smooth to be natural. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the fear twisting inside her. The man turned, smiling faintly. "Name's Burke. Used to work this mine with your grandmother." Jenica blinked. "That's impossible. She disappeared 30 years ago." Burke nodded. "Yeah, and I was the one who found her journal after she went missing. You two must have gotten the letter." Jenica frowned. "How do you know about that?" He chuckled. "Because I wrote it." Talia stepped forward from behind the crates, disbelief in her eyes. "You're lying. That letter was in Grandma's handwriting." "Oh, it was," Burke said easily. "Copied from her original notes. I needed you two to come here, to open this chamber. The mine's been sealed since Eliza vanished, and I could never get the access cleared without family heirs." Jenica's blood ran cold. "You used us?" "Don't make it sound so ugly," he said, his smile tightening. "You're part of this too, the Williams claim, your family's legacy. But what's inside that vault, that's what really matters." He turned back to the safe, running his hand over the steel surface. "You have any idea what she hid in here? Not gold, not silver, something rarer." Jenica exchanged a wary glance with Talia. "What do you mean?" Burke's tone dropped to a whisper. "Eliza Williams discovered a vein of telluride ore, gold fused with rare earth elements, government-level rare, stuff that can be used for advanced electronics, even energy tech. $15 million worth, at least." Talia's jaw dropped. "That's insane." "Oh, it's real, and it's in that safe. Problem is," he tapped the steel door, "Eliza never left the combination. But I think she left clues in her notebooks, notes you just happen to have." Jenica's stomach twisted. "You're after Grandma's journals." "Smart girl." Burke's eyes glinted. "Hand them over." She stayed still. "No." The smile vanished. "I wasn't asking." He drew the revolver, the metallic click echoing through the chamber. Talia gasped. Jenica lifted her chin. "You pull that trigger, you'll never find what's inside that vault." Burke's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" she said coolly. "Grandma didn't leave everything in her notebooks. She coded part of it. You'd need both of us to solve it." He studied her for a long moment, then lowered the gun slightly. "You've got guts." "Fine. You help me open it, and we split the profit. Half for me, half for the heirs." Jenica kept her expression neutral, but inside her mind was racing. If we pretend to cooperate, we might buy time. "All right," she said carefully, "but I want proof first, that what you're saying is true." Burke smirked. "Fine by me. You'll see soon enough." He motioned for them to follow him toward the safe. Jenica glanced once at Talia, then at the shaft. She was already mapping escape routes in her mind. Burke knelt beside the base of the safe and shone his light on a small brass plate. "See this? 4 notches. It's a manual combination lock, but there's a secondary lever inside. Needs a magnetic key to trigger it." He looked at Jenica. "Your grandmother had a pendant she always wore, a triangle and circle symbol. That wasn't just jewelry. That was the key." Jenica's breath caught. "The symbol? You mean this?" She pulled the pendant from under her jacket. It had been her grandmother's. She'd worn it for years without knowing its meaning. Burke grinned. "Exactly. That'll open the first seal." Talia breathed. "Jen, Don't. But Jenica had already moved closer to the safe, pretending to inspect it. Show me where. He pointed. Here, center dial. As she reached forward, she caught sight of something on the floor behind the safe, a small metal hatch half buried under dust. It looked like a ventilation shaft, or maybe an escape route. Her mind sparked with an idea. She inserted the pendant into the slot where Burke indicated. The lock clicked once, releasing a faint hiss of pressure. Burke smiled. Good. Now the combination. What's written in those notebooks? Jenica slowly recited a few numbers, deliberately wrong. 6-14-63. Burke twisted the dial. Nothing happened. He frowned. That's not it. Jenica shrugged. Guess you'll have to trust us a little longer. The revolver came up again. Don't play games. Before he could react, the ground trembled, just slightly at first, then harder. Rocks showered from the ceiling. The rumble grew louder. Earthquake? Talia shouted. Burke cursed, stumbling back. No, structural collapse. Move! Jenica grabbed Talia's arm and yanked her toward the small hatch behind the safe. She kicked it open, Rust screaming in protest, and shone her light down a narrow chute. Go! She yelled. Talia hesitated. Jenica, go! Burke fired. The bullet ricocheted off the metal wall, sparking inches from Jenica's shoulder. She shoved Talia through and dove in after her. The tunnel was steep, cold, and slick. They slid through darkness, the roar of falling rock and Burke's angry shouts fading behind them. When they finally landed, coughing and gasping, the light from above was gone. They were deeper than ever, far below the main shaft. Talia turned to her sister, panting. Where the hell are we? Jenica raised her lamp, revealing rough-hewn walls and something glinting in the rock all around them. Gold, more concentrated than before, glowing faintly in their light. And as her beam swept forward, it fell on something strange carved into the stone. A door, circular, covered with intricate runes. Etched across the top were words that froze her breath. Eliza's secret chamber. The silence after their fall was deafening. Dust hung thick in the air, and the faint beam from Jenica's headlamp sliced through the gloom, revealing jagged stone, dripping water, and veins of gold that shimmered like starlight. Talia was coughing beside her, bruised but alive. We made it? Jenica nodded weakly. Her body ached from the slide, but adrenaline kept her upright. She turned the lamp toward the strange circular door embedded in the rock. It wasn't like anything they'd seen in the mine so far. It was smooth, metallic, and engraved with intricate symbols that pulsed faintly as her light touched them. At the top, carved deep into the surface, were the words, Eliza's secret chamber. Talia breathed. What in the world? Jenica's pulse quickened. The craftsmanship was nothing like the crude mining tunnels above. It almost looked engineered. She reached out and brushed her gloved fingers along the carvings. They were warm to the touch, faintly vibrating, like the mountain itself was humming. Grandma, what did you do down here? Jenica whispered. Talia shone her light on the edges of the door. Is this some kind of vault, too? Maybe, but not the kind Burke was looking for. At the sound of his name, both sisters stiffened. Above them, the distant echo of falling rock still rumbled. Somewhere up there, Burke might have survived, and if he had, he would come looking. Jenica knelt to inspect the base of the door. Help me look for a latch, lever, anything. They searched every inch, but found nothing mechanical, only the carved runes. Talia traced one of them absently, a spiral flanked by 3 dots. Hold on, Jenica said suddenly. That symbol, it's in Grandma's journal. She unzipped her pack and pulled out the weathered notebook, flipping through pages until she found a sketch of the same design. Next to it, Eliza had written, 3 turns unlock the spiral, but only if the mountain's heart is awake. Talia frowned. What does that even mean? Jenica's gaze drifted to the walls, gold veins, quartz, and streaks of some darker mineral she didn't recognize. The air here felt electric, humming faintly through the stone. Maybe it means we need to power it somehow, she said. She pressed her palm to the spiral symbol. It didn't move. Then, as if in response to her touch, the faint hum grew louder. The symbols on the door flared briefly, glowing gold, then fading again. Jen, Talia said softly, eyes wide. You did something. Jenica's heart pounded. She pressed again, harder this time, turning her hand in a slow spiral motion. The runes began to rotate, stone against stone, grating but smooth. The vibration deepened, the gold veins in the surrounding rock flickered like lightning. And then, click. The circular door split down the middle, releasing a rush of stale, metallic-smelling air. Both sisters stumbled back as the door slid open, revealing a passageway beyond. Holy, Talia whispered, there's another level. Jenica grinned, despite her fear. Grandma, you were brilliant. They stepped cautiously inside. The corridor was narrow and smooth, the walls carved with more symbols and faint traces of old wiring. The floor sloped downward toward a large chamber, faintly lit by a bluish glow. Talia's voice quivered. Jen, this looks modern, like someone built this recently. Jenica shook her head. No. The tech's old, probably 1970s at best. Grandma must have worked with someone. At the end of the passage, the chamber opened up, and the sisters froze. The room was massive, carved in a dome shape. Rows of wooden crates were stacked along one wall, their labels faded but still legible. U.S. Geological Survey, restricted. In the center stood a large metal structure that resembled both a generator and a refinery. Its pipes ran into the walls, pulsing faintly with light. Beside it was a small desk, papers scattered across its surface, and an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. Jenica approached slowly, heart hammering. On the desk sat a framed photograph. It was their grandmother, Eliza Williams, standing beside a group of men in mining helmets, one of them with the name Burke stitched on his jacket. Jenica's hand trembled as she set the photo down. She worked with him. Talia stared. Then why did he say she disappeared? Why didn't he tell anyone about this? Because whatever they found down here, Jenica said grimly, wasn't supposed to exist. She flicked through the papers, diagrams, chemical analysis, notes written in Eliza's handwriting. The ore reacts to magnetic resonance, potential limitless energy output, must be kept secret until safe method discovered. Jenica's eyes widened. Talia, this isn't just gold. It's some kind of energy-rich mineral, something she discovered accidentally. Talia blinked. Like a new element? Maybe, or a rare compound. That's what Burke meant by worth 15 million. He wasn't exaggerating. She turned to the generator-like device. She was testing it, trying to convert the ore into energy. On the machine's panel, a switch was labeled Activate. Jenica hesitated. Don't even think about it, Talia said quickly. You have no idea what that thing does. Exactly. And neither did Grandma before she vanished. Before Talia could stop her, Jenica flipped the switch. The machine groaned, its lights flickering weakly. The pipes pulsed brighter. Then a low hum filled the air, a vibration deep enough to make their teeth ache. The gold veins in the walls began to glow, spreading light like molten rivers through the rock. "Jen!" Talia cried. "Turn it off!" But the switch was jammed, sparks erupted from the control panel, and the floor trembled beneath them. Suddenly, the old reel-to-reel tape recorder crackled to life. "If anyone finds this, this is Eliza Williams. The experiment cannot continue. They wanted power, not progress. Burke betrayed me. If you're hearing this, seal the mine and leave. The mountain is alive." Then static. Talia screamed as a deep crack split through the chamber floor. Glowing rock and steam erupted upward. "Go!" Jenica shouted. "Back to the tunnel!" They sprinted toward the circular door, the rumbling intensifying. Behind them, the machine exploded in a burst of golden light, sending shards of stone flying. Jenica shoved Talia through the doorway, just as the chamber behind them collapsed, sealing the metal door shut with a thunderous crash. They fell to the ground, coughing and gasping in the dust. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Talia whispered hoarsely, "You almost got us killed." Jenica stared at the sealed metal door, the one they'd barely escaped from moments earlier, her face pale but resolute. "Grandma didn't die down here. She sealed it on purpose to protect the secret." Talia sat up, trembling. "From what? Burke? The government? That thing?" Jenica looked up at the glowing cracks, still faintly pulsing in the walls. From the mountain itself. Far above them, faint and distant, the sound of metal clanging echoed again. Burke had survived. And now he was descending deeper, toward the heart of the mountain that had just awakened. The mountain was breathing. Jenica could hear it, the low pulsing rhythm that reverberated through the rock like a heartbeat. Dust sifted down from the tunnel ceiling in shimmering waves. The air was hot now, humming with energy. Every gold vein in the walls glowed faintly, as if the earth itself had come alive. Talia sat slumped against the wall, her face pale and streaked with grime. "Jen, what was that thing? That generator or whatever? What did Grandma build down here?" Jenica was staring at the sealed metal door, the one they'd barely escaped from moments earlier. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. "It wasn't just a generator," she said softly. "It was a converter. She found something the world wasn't ready for, something that could change everything." Talia blinked. "Like a new element?" "She had, sir. Maybe. Or a rare compound. That's what Burke meant by worth 15 million. He wasn't exaggerating." She turned to the generator-like device. She was testing it, trying to convert the ore into energy. On the machine's panel, a switch was labeled Activate. Jenica hesitated. "Don't even think about it," Talia said quickly. "You have no idea what that thing does." "Exactly. And neither did Grandma before she vanished." Before Talia could stop her, Jenica flipped the switch. The machine groaned, its lights flickering weakly. The pipes pulsed brighter. Then a low hum filled the air, a vibration deep enough to make their teeth ache. The gold veins in the walls began to glow, spreading light like molten rivers through the rock. "Jen!" Talia cried. "Turn it off!" But the switch was jammed, sparks erupted from the control panel, and the floor trembled beneath them. Suddenly, the old reel-to-reel tape recorder crackled to life. "If anyone finds this, this is Eliza Williams. The experiment cannot continue. They wanted power, not progress. Burke betrayed me. If you're hearing this, seal the mine and leave. The mountain is alive." Then static. Talia screamed as a deep crack split through the chamber floor. Glowing rock and steam erupted upward. "Go!" Jenica shouted. "Back to the tunnel!" They sprinted toward the circular door, the rumbling intensifying. Behind them, the machine exploded in a burst of golden light, sending shards of stone flying. Jenica shoved Talia through the doorway, just as the chamber behind them collapsed, sealing the metal door shut with a thunderous crash. They fell to the ground, coughing and gasping in the dust. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Talia whispered hoarsely, "You almost got us killed." Jenica stared at the sealed metal door, the one they'd barely escaped from moments earlier, her face pale but resolute. Grandma didn't die down here. She sealed it on purpose to protect the secret. Talia sat up, trembling. From what? Burke? The government? That thing? Jenica looked up at the glowing cracks still faintly pulsing in the walls. From the mountain itself. Far above them, faint and distant, the sound of metal clanging echoed again. Burke had survived. And now he was descending deeper, toward the heart of the mountain that had just awakened. The mountain was breathing. Jenica could hear it, the low pulsing rhythm that reverberated through the rock like a heart. Before Jenica could respond, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. The walls groaned as fissures split through the rock, sending showers of glowing dust raining down. The gold veins flared like molten fire. "Move!" Jenica shouted. They dove aside as a section of the tunnel collapsed. Burke stumbled but kept his balance, gripping a nearby support beam. Behind him, part of the ceiling caved in, blocking the way back up. Talia coughed through the haze. "We're trapped!" Burke's grin widened. "Not trapped, forced downward, exactly where we need to go." He turned toward a newly opened fissure in the tunnel floor, a slanted gap glowing faintly with golden light. "There," he said, "the mine's opening its core." "Burke, don't!" Jenica shouted, but he was already lowering himself into the rift, his lamp bobbing as he disappeared below. Talia looked at her sister in disbelief. "He's insane!" "Maybe," Jenica said, grabbing her pack. "But if the mine's unstable, we can't stay here. If that core's still active, it could collapse the whole valley." Talia hesitated. "So, what's the plan?" Jenica exhaled. "We're following him, but we're getting out alive, not rich." The fissure dropped steeply into darkness. They slid down, using their rope to slow their descent until their feet struck a floor that wasn't rock, it was smooth metal. They were standing in another chamber, larger than anything they'd seen yet. The walls were lined with machinery, glowing with faint pulses of light. Pipes hissed with steam, and in the center stood a massive crystalline formation, embedded in the earth like a heart of gold and fire. Burke was already there, standing before it with his arms outstretched. "Beautiful, isn't it? The mountain's core. Eliza called it the Heartstone. She said it was alive. She wasn't wrong." Jenica's breath caught. The crystal pulsed with rhythm, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat. Every pulse sent ripples through the machinery, as if the mountain itself were breathing in sync. Talia whispered, "It's alive?" Burke turned toward them. "Alive, yes, but not in the way you think. This is nature's battery, a mineral that converts magnetic force into raw energy. Infinite, renewable, self-sustaining. You're looking at the end of oil, coal, everything, and it's ours." Jenica shook her head. "No, Burke, it belongs to the mountain, to Grandma's legacy, and if it gets out—" A low roar cut her off. The light within the crystal flared blindingly bright. Cracks of molten gold spidered across the floor. Burke shielded his face. "It's reacting to us. The heat." Jenica felt it too, the vibration growing, the air burning. "Talia, we have to move," she shouted. They ran toward a side tunnel just as the Heartstone surged, unleashing a wave of golden energy that threw Burke backward. He hit the wall with a sickening thud, his gun clattering away. Jenica and Talia dove behind a rock as the blast passed. When the light dimmed, they looked back. Burke was on his knees, barely conscious, staring at the glowing fissure spreading across the chamber. The Heartstone pulsed faster, the rhythm turning frantic, alive, angry. "Jen, Talia whispered. "It's going to blow, isn't it?" Jenica's jaw tightened. "Not if I can stop it." She sprinted toward Burke's fallen bag, rifling through until she found a detonator, the kind used for controlled mining blasts. She looked up at the glowing core. "We can seal it. Collapse the chamber before it reaches the surface." Talia's eyes widened. "Jen, that'll bury us too." Jenica met her gaze, steady and fierce. "Grandma risked everything to contain it. I'm not letting her die for nothing." Before Talia could stop her, she started setting the charges along the wall. The mountain roared again, trembling as if it sensed what she was doing. Burke groaned, struggling to his feet. "You don't understand. You can't destroy it. This is the future." Jenica turned to him. "No, this is a warning." She hit the detonator. The explosion ripped through the heart of the mine, a thunderous roar of light and stone and heat. As the shock wave hit, Jenica grabbed Talia's hand, and the world went white. Silence. That was the first thing Jenica noticed, the absolute absence of sound. Then came the weight, the crushing pressure of earth pressing down on her chest, pinning her in darkness. Every breath was a battle. Her thoughts drifted in flashes, the explosion, the blinding light, Talia's scream. Then, blackness. She tried to move, and pain shot through her side like lightning. Grit filled her mouth. "Talia?" she croaked weakly. "Talia!" No answer. Panic surged, cutting through the haze. She forced her arm free, clawing at the debris until her fingers broke through to a small pocket of air. She coughed, gasped, and called again, louder this time. "Talia!" A faint sound answered, a cough, weak, but real. Jenica's heart leapt. "Hold on, I'm coming." She pushed, kicked, and dug through the rubble, her nails splitting, her lungs burning with dust. Finally, a hand broke through, small, trembling, familiar. She grabbed it with everything she had. Talia's voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. "You blew it up." Jenica laughed, a raw, desperate laugh. "You're welcome." They lay side by side in the dark for a moment, gasping for breath. The air was hot, metallic, laced with smoke. Around them, the mine groaned, alive but wounded. "Where's Burke?" Talia murmured. Jenica turned her head toward the faint glow flickering in the distance. A sliver of gold light pulsed faintly through the cracks in the rock. "I think," she said quietly, "he's closer to that glow than we are." Talia coughed again. "What do we do now?" "We find a way out," Jenica said, shifting to her knees. "If the blast didn't collapse the upper tunnels completely, there might be a path up through the old ventilation shafts." She reached into her ruined backpack. Miraculously, her small LED lamp still worked. The light cut through the gloom, illuminating a jagged cavern that hadn't been there before, a space torn open by the explosion. It was vast, shimmering, unreal. The walls were streaked with veins of molten gold, still cooling from the blast. Shards of crystal littered the floor, glowing faintly like embers. And in the center, a deep fissure pulsed with residual energy, the dying heartbeat of the Heartstone. And there, beside it, a figure. Burke. He was barely conscious, half buried in rubble. His once cocky expression was gone, replaced with something hollow. Fear. Jenica evaluated, every instinct screamed to leave him. He'd lied, threatened them, chased greed into madness, but something in her, the part that had inherited their grandmother's stubborn compassion, refused to let him die like that. "Jenica," she said, gripping her sister's hand, "help me move this beam." Talia groaned. "Jen, you can't be serious." "He saved Grandma's notes once. He doesn't deserve to be buried down here. Together, they pushed. The beam shifted, then rolled free with a thunderous echo. Burke gasped, sucking in a ragged breath. His eyes fluttered open. You should have left me. Jenica crouched beside him. I almost did. He gave a broken laugh that turned into a cough. The core. It's not destroyed. You didn't kill it. I know, but we buried it. Burke's gaze drifted toward the going fissure. It'll wake again. You can't stop something like that. You can only delay it. Jenica met his eyes. Then we'll make sure it stays asleep.
They built a stretcher from a collapsed ladder and some broken planks. The climb upward was brutal, every step an act of sheer will. The air grew cooler, thinner. At times, they had to crawl through gaps so tight, Jenica thought she'd suffocate. Then, faintly, the scent of pine. Fresh air. Talia pushed a loose rock aside, and sunlight poured through, dazzling after the darkness. They emerged onto the mountainside, dirty, bleeding, but alive. Behind them, the mine's main shaft had caved in completely, sealed beneath tons of rock. Jenica collapsed onto the cold ground, staring at the vast blue sky. For the first time in what felt like forever, she let herself breathe freely. "We made it," Talia whispered, voice trembling. Jenica nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Yeah, we did." They sat there for a while in silence, the wind whispering through the trees, the mountain finally still. Then Talia turned to her sister, her face pale but determined. "What now? We can't just leave it buried. Someone will come. Maybe the company, maybe the government." Jenica's gaze drifted down to the valley below, where the mine's entrance lay hidden beneath fresh landslide debris. "We tell the truth," she said finally. "Not about the gold or the energy, just that it's unstable, too dangerous to excavate." Talia frowned. "That'll only work for so long." Jenica sighed. "Then we make sure no one has a reason to dig." They spent the next 3 days recovering in the old cabin, the same one their grandmother had used as her research outpost decades ago. It was small, tucked away in the pines, untouched by time. There, Jenica found the last of Eliza's journals, half burned, hidden behind a loose floorboard. The final entry read, "If they find the Heartstone, they must understand, it is not treasure but life. It grows, it feels, it responds. If disturbed, it will rise. It must never be awakened." Jenica read the words aloud softly, her fingers trembling. She knew it was alive. She wasn't just studying it, she was guarding it. Talia leaned over her shoulder. "Then maybe we're not miners or scientists. Maybe we're its guardians now." Jenica smiled faintly. "Yeah, guardians of something worth more than money." Outside, the mountain glowed faintly under the afternoon sun, calm, beautiful, hiding its secret once more. That night, as the sisters sat by the fire, a distant rumble echoed through the valley. Jenica froze. For a heartbeat, she thought it was thunder. But deep beneath them, the faintest golden light flickered through the cracks of the earth, a single pulse, like a heartbeat. Then it was gone. Talia met her eyes. "Did you feel that?" Jenica nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Yeah," she whispered. "It's still alive." 2 weeks passed since the collapse. The mountain had gone quiet again, deceptively so. From the outside, Stillwater Ridge looked like it always had, windswept, lonely, serene, but Jenica could feel the subtle hum in the soil when she walked the slopes, like the faint pulse of something slumbering beneath her boots. She didn't tell Talia that she could still feel it. Her sister needed rest, real rest, and Talia was finally sleeping through the night, but Jenica barely could. Every sound, the creak of the cabin timbers, the roll of distant thunder, made her heart race.
And then, one morning, she saw them. Two black SUVs parked at the base of the ridge, men in gray utility uniforms, equipment, scanners, drones, seismic sensors, all unloaded with quiet precision. They weren't from town. Jenica knew that immediately. She watched from the tree line through binoculars. The vehicles had no logos, but the men's behavior was disciplined. Military? No. Private. Corporate. Her blood went cold. Someone had found out. She went back to the cabin where Talia was brewing coffee. "We've got company," Jenica said quietly. "Down by the old shaft entrance." Talia froze mid-pour. "How many?" "Half a dozen at least, maybe more." "Do they look like surveyors?" Jenica shook her head. "No, they're too organized, and they've got tech I've never seen." Talia set the pot down, her expression tightening. "You think Burke told them?" Jenica sighed. "He's the only one who knew enough to point them here, and we didn't exactly check to make sure he stayed unconscious when we left." Talia swore under her breath. "So what do we do?" Jenica's answer came without hesitation. "We protect it." That night they hiked down under cover of darkness. The air was cold and brittle, the stars sharp above them. They moved silently, following the faint hum of generators toward the glow of the camp below. A chain-link perimeter had already gone up around the collapsed mine entrance. Floodlights illuminated rows of equipment, and men moving between them with quiet purpose. Jenica crouched behind a boulder and watched as one of them adjusted a tablet screen. "What's that?" Talia whispered. "Ground-penetrating radar," Jenica said grimly. "They're mapping the underground structure." "So they know there's something down there?" "Not yet," Jenica said, her jaw tight. "But if they keep scanning, they will." She crept closer, her heart pounding. Every instinct screamed this was dangerous, but she couldn't let strangers dig into what her grandmother had died to protect. A voice echoed from the camp, calm and authoritative. "Once we pinpoint the anomaly, I want the drills ready. The energy readings are off the charts." Jenica froze. That voice. It wasn't Burke's. She peered over the rock, and her blood ran cold. Standing by one of the scanners was a woman in her 40s, tall, composed, wearing a black coat with a corporate emblem stitched on the sleeve. Helios Research Group. Jenica knew the name, a multinational conglomerate specializing in energy technologies, the same group that had tried to buy Eliza Williams' patents 20 years ago. "Dr. Armitage, we've got something. Strong signal, 200 feet down." Armitage smiled. "Good. Prepare the seismic drill." Jenica's breath caught. They'd found it. She ducked down, gripping Talia's sleeve. "We need to stop them." "Jen," Talia whispered fiercely, "there's at least 10 of them down there. We can't just waltz in." "We don't have to fight them," Jenica said, thinking fast. "We just need to make them think it's unsafe. If we can trigger another minor collapse or spike their readings, they'll back off." Talia looked skeptical. "You're talking about bluffing a billion-dollar company with a pile of explosives?" Jenica smirked faintly. "Wouldn't be the first time." They returned to the cabin and pulled out the remaining supplies from their grandmother's shed. Old dynamite sticks, caps, and signal wire, all still sealed in oilcloth. Eliza had kept them for emergencies, and this was as close as it got. By the next night, they'd set the charges around the ridge perimeter, not enough to destroy, just enough to shake. When they were done, Talia sat back, covered in dirt, and gave her sister a look. "You realize we're committing several felonies, right?" Jenica smiled thinly. "Only if they catch us." At dawn, they watched from the hillside as the Helios team began drilling. The air filled with the metallic whine of machinery. Jenica waited until the sensors spiked on the radar display, then pressed the detonator.
A thunderous boom ripped through the mountain. The ground bucked and split, sending men sprawling. Dust and smoke filled the air. Equipment toppled. Alarms blared. The seismic readings went wild, bright red on every screen. "Pull back," Dr. Armitage shouted. "The ground is unstable. Shut it down." Jenica exhaled, relief flooding through her. It had worked. But as the dust settled, something unexpected happened. A faint golden light began to pulse from the collapsed area, the same eerie glow that had haunted Jenica's dreams since the explosion. Talia saw it too. "Oh no, Jen, it's—" The mountain groaned. A shockwave rippled through the valley, and a column of golden light burst skyward from the earth, piercing the clouds. The Helios team screamed and scattered. The light shimmered for several seconds, then faded, leaving behind silence and smoke. Jenica could only stare. It woke up. Talia turned to her, face pale. "What have we done?" By the next morning, news had spread like wildfire. Satellite photos, amateur videos of the light beam, social media speculation about energy anomalies in Stillwater Ridge. Within hours, journalists and government officials descended on the small mountain town. The sisters hid in the cabin, the world closing in around them. Talia sat at the table, scrolling through headlines on her phone. "They're calling it a geothermal eruption," she said. "But Helios isn't buying it. They filed for an emergency excavation permit." Jenica leaned against the window, staring at the ridge. "It's not just an eruption. It's trying to protect itself." Talia frowned. "Protect itself?" Jenica turned, eyes distant. "Grandma said the Heartstone was alive, that it responded to disturbance. Maybe it's not just energy. Maybe it's aware." Talia's voice softened. "You think it knows we're still here?" Jenica didn't answer. She just looked out the window, where a faint golden shimmer lingered over the trees. That night, as they packed emergency supplies, headlights swept across the cabin. A vehicle was approaching. Jenica grabbed her rifle and motioned for Talia to stay back. A door slammed outside. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Then, a knock. Jenica opened the door just enough to see the figure standing in the rain. Burke. Alive, bandaged, leaner, but unmistakably him. "Before you shoot, you should know I'm not here for revenge." Jenica narrowed her eyes. "Then why are you here?" He looked past her toward the mountain, where the faint glow pulsed in the distance. "Because they're coming, and you're the only ones who know how to stop what's waking up." The storm raged outside, hammering the roof of the old cabin as lightning flashed across Stillwater Ridge. Inside, the fire snapped and spat, casting long, uneasy shadows across three faces: Jenica, Talia, and Burke. Burke's eyes, tired and haunted, flickered between the sisters. His voice was low and gravelly. "They've brought heavy drills, seismic stabilizers, and containment units. Helios isn't here to explore. They're here to harvest." Jenica's jaw tightened. "Harvest what? The Heartstone? You saw what happened last time. It nearly tore the mountain apart." Burke nodded grimly. "And that's exactly why they want it. They believe the mineral's capable of generating self-sustaining plasma, pure, clean power. They've been after Eliza's notes for decades. When they found out you two inherited the land, they waited for the right moment." Talia leaned forward, anger flashing in her eyes. "So what? You led them here?" "I didn't," Burke snapped. "I tried to warn them off, but when I disappeared, they followed my old maps. They knew where I'd gone." Jenica crossed her arms. "And you expect us to trust you now?" Burke's gaze hardened. "No, but you need me if you're going to survive what's coming." A loud crack of thunder shook the windows. The wind howled like a living thing through the trees. Talia flinched. "What do you mean? What's coming?" Burke rose unsteadily, limping toward the window.
You think that light show was a coincidence? The Helios reacted to the machines. They woke it up again. Every pulse they trigger makes it stronger. Jenica frowned. Stronger how? He looked at her, the firelight glinting in his eyes. It's not just a mineral. It's a living system. The deeper we dig, the more we're inside its body. Talia shivered. You're saying the mountain's alive? Burke turned back toward the glass. I'm saying your grandmother wasn't crazy. By morning, the storm had cleared, but the world outside had changed. The air felt heavier, humming with low vibration. Birds avoided the ridge. The clouds above it swirled unnaturally, spiraling toward the same point where the golden light had burst through. The three of them hiked to a high ridge overlooking the Helios site. From there, they could see the chaos below. Dozens of tents, floodlights, excavators tearing into the collapsed mine. The hum of generators filled the valley. And in the center of it all, the glow. A faint golden aura pulsed from the earth where the shaft had been sealed. The men below seemed oblivious, focused on their machines. But Jenica could feel it, the same vibration she'd sensed in her bones since the explosion. It's spreading, she whispered. The energy is bleeding through the rock. Burke nodded grimly. Once it hits the surface, it'll destabilize everything. The ridge, the forest, maybe the whole valley. Talia's face went pale. So what's the plan? Jenica lowered her binoculars. We find the main conduit. There must be a central access point near the shaft, some kind of vent. If we can redirect the energy or collapse the tunnel again, we can contain it. Burke gave a dry laugh. Contain it? You're going to try to trap a mountain? Jenica shot him a glare. Got a better idea? He hesitated, then sighed. No, but if we're doing this, we'll need to go deep again, below the shaft. That's where the real core lies. Talia shook her head. Jen, we almost died down there. Jenica met her eyes. I know, but if we don't go back, everyone up here dies. That night, under a moonless sky, the three of them descended through the ridge's eastern caverns, an old emergency tunnel that hadn't collapsed during the explosion. It smelled of rust and earth and memory. Their headlamps sliced through the darkness. Jenica led, with Burke behind and Talia taking up the rear. The deeper they went, the louder the vibration became. It wasn't just a hum now. It was a heartbeat. The walls glowed faintly, gold veins pulsing in rhythm. The air shimmered like heat, distorting the light. Tiny sparks crackled between their boots and the rock floor. Talia whispered, It feels like we're walking through a living thing. Burke muttered, That's because you are. They reached a vast cavern where the floor dropped away into an abyss. At the bottom, something massive glowed, a crystalline lattice, alive with light and movement. It pulsed in waves like a breathing creature, the Heartstone. But it wasn't dormant anymore. It had grown, veins of light spreading outward like roots, merging with the surrounding rock. Each pulse sent tremors through the cavern walls. Jenica stared down, awe and dread twisting inside her. It's beautiful. Burke whispered, It's waking. Suddenly, the cavern walls trembled. A low, mournful sound rose from the depths. Not quite a roar, not quite a moan. The light flared, blinding. The ground split under their feet. Move! Jenica shouted. They scrambled for higher ground as the floor collapsed, sending rocks cascading into the glowing chasm. A burst of energy surged upward, throwing Burke against the wall. Jenica grabbed his arm, pulling him to safety as Talia clung to a stalagmite. The light dimmed again, flickering like a dying flame. Then a voice, faint, echoing, almost human, rippled through the chamber. Why do you wake me? Jenica froze. Did you hear that? Talia's eyes widened. That wasn't... It couldn't be. Burke's face went ashen. It's communicating.
You disturb my sleep. You tear my flesh. Why? The words weren't sound. They were vibration, resonating through their bones, through the air, through everything around them. Jenica swallowed hard. "We're not here to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "Just to stop them, the people above. They're trying to use you." For a moment, there was silence. Then the glow pulsed again, slower this time, like a heartbeat calming. "They feed on what they do not understand." Talia whispered, "Jen, it's thinking." Burke staggered forward, disbelief etched across his face. "It's a sentient system, not just power, consciousness." The voice continued, softer now. "You carry her blood, the one who kept my secret." Jenica's breath caught. "You mean my grandmother?" "She promised to guard my rest, but others came. They hungered. She sealed me away. Now you stand where she stood." Talia looked at her sister, stunned. "Jen, it knows who you are." "The surface burns. The men pierce my heart. You must choose, silence or fire." Then, as suddenly as it came, the glow faded, the vibration stopped.
Outside, the night was alive with floodlights and the distant rumble of machinery. Helios had begun their final phase of drilling. Jenica looked to her sister. "One last collapse." Talia nodded grimly. "Let's end this." The night air was razor-sharp as Jenica and Talia crept along the tree line above the excavation camp. Below them, the Helios floodlights cast harsh white beams over the site, a scene of mechanical fury. Trucks rumbled, drills churned, and men in yellow suits moved like ants over a glowing wound in the earth. The shaft had widened since their last visit. The Heartstone's pulse had intensified, visible now even from the surface, a golden shimmer that made the air ripple like a mirage. Burke crouched beside them, eyes scanning the perimeter. "They've breached the containment layer," he whispered. "Once they hit the conduit chamber, the pressure will tear through everything." Talia's voice trembled. "And take the ridge with it?" Jenica adjusted the straps of her pack, her jaw set. Inside were the last of their charges, old mining-grade explosives Burke had salvaged from a hidden cache near the creek. They weren't much, but if placed at the right points, they could trigger a collapse powerful enough to seal the main tunnel for good. Burke caught her look. "Are you sure about this?" Jenica's eyes flicked to her sister, then back to him. "There's no other way." Talia swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "We stop them. We seal the mine, then we get out." Burke exhaled, nodding once. "Then let's move." They slipped through the darkness, weaving between shadows and machinery. The hum of generators masked their footsteps. Helios guards patrolled the outer perimeter, but their attention was fixed on the main drill rig. None of them noticed 3 figures vanish down the service ladder leading into the old shaft. The deeper they descended, the hotter it grew. The rock glowed faintly around them, and static prickled against their skin. Every vibration felt like the mountain's heartbeat, faster, stronger, angrier. Halfway down, the tunnel widened into a freshly carved passage lined with reinforced steel supports. The faint sound of drilling echoed from below. Burke pointed ahead. "The primary rig's just beyond that bend. That's where the first charge goes." Jenica knelt, pulling a charge from her pack. Her hands were steady despite the tremor in the ground. "Give me light." Talia flicked on her lamp, illuminating the wall. Jenica set the charge, pressing the detonator seal into the rock. A faint red glow blinked once. Armed. "That's one. Next."
They crept deeper. The passage branched, one way leading toward the drill site, the other into a natural fissure sloping downward. The light pulsing from within that crack made the air shimmer like a mirage. Talia paused, staring down the fissure. "Jen, do you feel that?" Jenica did. The faint vibration wasn't random, it was rhythmic, almost like a slow chant resonating through the stone. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Burke grimaced. "It's communicating again." Jenica looked down the glowing fissure. "It knows we're here." When they reached the main drill chamber, the sight stopped them cold. Helios had set up a massive rig that pierced straight into the core. The machinery was surrounded by glowing veins of gold running along the cavern walls, veins that throbbed like arteries. And in the center of it all, the drill bit had just broken through. The moment it did, the world changed. A column of golden light erupted from the ground, blinding and soundless. Every metal surface vibrated violently. The men near the rig screamed as their equipment overloaded, sparks flying. The air itself seemed to fracture, waves of heat and sound rippling outward. Jenica and the others ducked behind a rock formation as the wave rolled past. Talia covered her ears. "What's happening?" Burke's voice was raw. "They've hit the core!" The cavern walls began to hum with terrible resonance, a deep, living frequency that pressed against their skulls. The Heartstone had awakened fully now, and it wasn't pleased. Through the chaos, Jenica saw one of the Helios scientists standing frozen in the light, his face illuminated by awe and terror. He reached toward the beam and in an instant disintegrated into ash. "Move!" Jenica shouted. "Now!" They sprinted toward the lower maintenance shaft, clinging to the wall as rock and fire rained down. Burke stumbled, nearly falling, but Talia caught his arm. They reached the halfway mark when Jenica threw down the second charge, slamming it against the support column. The structure was shaking apart already, but she knew the directed blasts would bring it all down faster. "Two more," she yelled over the roar. Burke's face was drenched in sweat. "You'll never make it to the next chamber in time." Jenica met his gaze. "I have to." The ground split open behind them, releasing another wave of light that knocked them flat. Through the shimmer, Jenica saw forms, vague silhouettes moving within the radiance. Not human, not distinct, but something vast and ancient. Whispers filled the air, not words, but emotions, rage, sorrow, betrayal. Talia clutched her sister's arm. "It's in our heads." Jenica forced herself to breathe. "It's trying to communicate again." "They have torn my veins, stolen my heart." The voice came from everywhere, vibrating through the floor, through their bones, through the very air. Jenica shouted, "We're trying to stop them." The light flickered, then pulsed slower, the fury fading slightly. "You are her blood, her promise, then finish what she began." The glow shifted toward the central shaft, illuminating the weakest point in the structure. The message was clear. Jenica nodded. "It's showing me where to place the last charge." Burke looked at her, realization dawning. "You're not coming back up, are you?" She didn't answer. Talia grabbed her arm. "No, we go together." Jenica shook her head, her voice breaking. "If this goes wrong, the entire ridge collapses. You need to get Burke out, warn the valley." "Jenica, please tell. Go." Her sister's eyes filled with tears, but she saw the resolve there, the same stubborn, unyielding strength their grandmother had carried. Finally, Talia nodded. "Don't make this your ending."
Jenica managed a faint smile. Maybe it's our beginning. As Talia and Burke retreated toward the exit, Jenica crawled along the trembling ledge, the golden light illuminating her every step. She could feel the mountain's heartbeat syncing with her own. She reached the exposed vein, the heartstone's core, and placed the final charge. Her fingers hovered over the detonator. Then she heard it again. "Child of the mountain, do you understand now?" Jenica whispered, "Yes, you're not a treasure to be mined. You're the mountain itself. Then protect my silence." The light flared, not in anger, but gratitude. Jenica pressed the detonator. The explosion tore through the shaft with thunderous fury. The walls folded inward as a surge of light erupted toward the sky. The mountain roared like a living creature reclaiming its heart. From the surface, Talia and Burke watched as the ridge imploded, collapsing in on itself until the glow vanished entirely. A shock wave of dust rolled over the valley, followed by absolute silence. The Heartstone was gone, the mine sealed, the mountain still.
Talia looked toward the ridge, where faint wisps of gold shimmered through the haze. A single tear slid down her cheek. "I'll make sure they remember," she said softly. "I'll tell them what she saved." 6 months later, the mountain slept. The slopes of Stillwater Ridge were green again, the air calm, the river clear. Only a faint golden shimmer beneath certain stones hinted that anything unusual had ever happened there. But the world above had changed in quieter ways. Whispers of disaster, corporate denial, and a story buried deeper than any mine. Talia Williams stood at the base of the ridge, staring up at what remained of the Helios site. The company had fenced off the area, labeling it a geothermal collapse. No mention of explosions, no mention of the dead, no mention of her sister. The official reports said no survivors were found below level 5. Yet something inside Talia refused to accept that. She adjusted the strap of her backpack and began climbing again, her boots crunching on gravel as the wind sighed through the pines. Burke followed a few paces behind. Older now, walking with a cane. His limp was worse since the collapse, but his spirit, stubborn as the mountain itself, remained. "You shouldn't keep coming back," he said. "They're still watching. Helios has eyes everywhere." Talia smirked faintly. "Then let them watch." They reached the old ridge trail just before dusk. The air up here shimmered faintly, charged with static. It always did, like the mountain remembered them. Talia knelt, brushing her hand across the earth. The soil was warm. "She's here," she murmured. Burke's eyes softened. "Talia." "I can feel her," she whispered. "When the wind moves, it's her. When the light hits the stone, it glows just like her necklace used to." He said nothing, because deep down, he believed her. That night, Talia sat by a campfire near the collapsed shaft, staring at the stars. She pulled a small metal box from her coat pocket, the only thing that had survived the blast. Inside was Jenica's field compass, its needle frozen between north and east. The faintest hum rose from it, like a heartbeat. Burke, half asleep beside the fire, stern. "Still not working?" Talia shook her head. "Not in this world." Before he could respond, the night deepened, unnaturally. The forest went silent. No wind, no crickets, just stillness. Then, a glow. A golden pulse flickered beneath the collapsed stone, spreading outward in slow, steady waves. The ground trembled faintly. The compass needle began to spin. Burke sat up alarmed. "You see that?" Talia rose to her feet. "It's her." The light grew stronger, outlining the old shaft in shimmering gold. A low hum filled the air, rhythmic, melodic, familiar. Then, through the glow, words formed, not spoken aloud, but resonating through their bones. Talia. Her name, Jenica's voice. Talia's knees nearly buckled. Jenica! Oh God, Jen, is that you? The mountain breathes. I am part of it now. Talia's eyes filled with tears. No! No, you're not gone! We can dig! No digging, no breaking. The Heartstone lives through me now. It remembers peace because of you. Burke's hands shook as he clutched his cane. She's merged with the system, he whispered. The core's consciousness, it absorbed her. Talia ignored him, eyes fixed on the light. Jen, I can't lose you again. You didn't lose me, you saved me. You saved everyone. The light pulsed once, tender, like a heartbeat. Then, softer. Tell them the truth, Talia. Tell them the mountain has a soul. And with that, the glow faded. The night returned, the compass needle stilled, but not to north. It pointed toward the heart of the ridge. 2 weeks later, Talia sat in a conference room in Denver, her hair pulled back, her boots still caked with mountain dust. Across from her sat Agent Leora Kane, an investigator from the Federal Environmental Authority, one of the few people willing to listen. So, Kane said, flipping through her notes, you're claiming Helios Corporation detonated an illegal seismic probe that caused a sentient geological event? Talia's voice didn't waver. I'm not claiming it. I lived it. Kane studied her face, searching for cracks. And your sister, Jenica Williams. She died in the collapse. Talia hesitated. She changed. The mountain kept her. Kane's brow furrowed. Kept her? Talia leaned forward. You think I sound crazy, don't you? The agent didn't answer. Talia slid a small crystal across the table. It glowed faintly gold, warm to the touch. We found this 200 feet down, the same composition as the Heartstone. It hums when you speak near it. It reacts to emotion. Kane picked it up, skeptical. It's warm. Because it's alive, Talia said quietly. Just like her. The agent stared at her, then placed the crystal in an evidence bag. If what you're saying is true, Ms. Williams, Helios was experimenting with something unprecedented. We'll need to analyze this. Talia stood, meeting her gaze. You won't find what you're looking for. The mountain only gives what it chooses. Months passed. The story of Stillwater Ridge faded from headlines. Helios dissolved under pressure from lawsuits and investigations. The site was declared off-limits, a geological anomaly under federal protection. Talia returned one last time. She climbed to the summit where the ridge curved into the clouds. In her hand, she held a small sapling, one she'd grown from seeds near the old mine's entrance. She planted it in the soil above where the Heartstone once glowed. The wind stirred, soft and warm. The faintest hum filled the air, the same sound that lived in her memory. Talia smiled through her tears. You always wanted to bring back life here. The hum deepened, wrapping around her like an embrace. Then faintly, the compass in her pocket began to vibrate again. She pulled it out and gasped. The needle glowed golden, slowly rotating before settling to a perfect stillness, pointing straight down, toward the mountain's heart. A voice whispered in the wind, carried through the trees. Not gone, just home. Talia's tears fell silently onto the soil. She whispered, I'll see you again, one day. The sapling glowed softly, the leaves trembling as if in response. Then the light faded, leaving only the sound of the wind and the quiet strength of the mountain beneath her feet. Years later, scientists studying Stillwater Ridge would discover something extraordinary: an unexplained electromagnetic field emanating from the core, stable, self-sustaining, and unlike any known geological structure on Earth. They called it the Williams anomaly. But to those who remembered the sisters, it had another name: the heart of the mountain. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.